U.S. President Joe Biden has authorized Ukraine to use powerful long-range American weapons inside Russia. The decision comes as thousands of North Korean troops deploy in support of Moscow's war effort, sparking concern from Biden and his advisors that their entry could lead to a dangerous new phase in the war. The Kremlin responded by saying that the move shows that the Biden administration wants to throw oil on the fire of the conflict, while Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky responded that the missiles will speak for themselves. Biden's authorization came after one of Moscow's largest aerial attacks on Ukraine in months. Now, geopolitical analyst Dr. Bola Adediran joins me from the United Kingdom to discuss the state of the war. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me, Precious.
So we are Russia and Ukraine are now 1,000 days into the war. Where it stands now, North Korean troops are now fighting alongside Russia in this war. We also see that President Biden has given the go-ahead to Ukraine to use long-range missiles inside Russia. What do you make of the dimension that this war has now taken?
I think we're entering into a very concerning phase of the war. As you've mentioned, North Korean troops, more than 11,000 of them, have been operating in the Kursk region of Russia, working side by side with their Russian counterparts to retake Russian territory. And now it appears that Joe Biden has crossed the red line Vladimir Putin has set, which is to use long-range missiles that can get and hit targets within Russia. I think that it is very concerning because we are beginning to get into a sort of a very global dimension of the conflict. If Russia takes, or at least if Russia makes good on its word that this is a red line, then it has threatened the U.S. It said very clearly that if U.S. long-range missiles attack its territory, then U.S. military are part of the conflict and will be targeted. And if U.S. military assets are targeted, then it inevitably means that U.S. is now part of the war. So it's a concerning phase of the war. It is escalating beyond dimensions that we have anticipated, and it's not good for anyone.
And I want to get to Russia's response in just a moment. But let's talk about this reversal in policy by President Biden. It comes months before he hands over power to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's election has sort of raised fears over the future of U.S. support for Kyiv. But do you see this reversal in policy strengthening Ukraine's hand militarily? And could this also grant Ukraine any sort of leverage in peace talks that may, lie ahead under President Donald Trump, President-elect rather?
Yeah, I think the clear strategy behind what Joe Biden has done is to increase Ukraine's leverage, as you have rightly mentioned. The intention is to anticipate some of the actions that Donald Trump will take starting from January next year, January 20, when he becomes the president substantively. And then to ensure that Ukraine is granted the kind of support that it needs now to push Russia back or to hold on to the territory in Kursk, so that when Donald Trump inevitably begins to talk about peace deals, which would include Russia taking the Donbas region, then perhaps we can be talking about exchange of territories, because Russia would obviously not want Ukraine to continue, Ukraine to hold on to the Kursk region. So we might be talking of exchange of territory. So this is what I think Joe Biden is trying to anticipate. And a couple of weeks also, I think it's notable to mention that there are rumblings within the White House and within the administration that they want to also speed up the delivery of aid to Zelensky to ensure that Ukraine can continue to fight for at least 2025. So independent of what Joe Biden wants to do, his all talks about ending the war on day one. They are trying as much as possible to make sure that the ball is not entirely within its court. And I think one last point that you mentioned is that they are also trying to probably pour a bit of oil in the works of or sand, as it were, in the works of Donald Trump. He's claimed that he was going to stop the war on day one of when he becomes president. How quickly can he do that with all these complexities that have been added to the conflict? Remains to be seen.
All right, so let's get to Russia's response. I didn't mention that we're going to talk about it in just a moment. President Vladimir Putin today lowered Russia's threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. Now, if you go through the new doctrine, it asserts that Russia could use nuclear weapons in an event of an attack by a nation backed by a nuclear power. What do you make of this? Because you have talked about how this new long-range missiles reversal of policy by President Joe Biden is a dangerous escalation in the war. But what about this new doctrine, or also revised by President Putin?
I think that it is concerning. Obviously, the nuclear threshold. If you followed what Russia has been doing in the last 2 years, it's been reviewing its nuclear policy. I think previously it reviewed it a couple of months or a year ago, that nuclear weapons can be used not in defense, but in anticipation. So when the regime is threatened, or the nation of Russia is threatened, and God knows what that means actually, Russia administration can use nuclear weapons in anticipation of the destruction of the regime. And now they've gone even a bit lower than that and reduced the threshold much more strongly, which is to say that if NATO countries or even Ukraine, crosses certain thresholds, then they might use nuclear weapons. What I'm more concerned about is not necessarily that they will use strategic weapons. It is that they might be emboldened to use tactical weapons. With tactical weapons, there have been discussions about the use of tactical weapons, which are usually called battlefield weapons, battlefield nuclear weapons, for a long time. And Russia has managed not to do that. But there was a time when they were considering that seriously. So perhaps they might be emboldened and try to use tactical weapons as a form of deterrence to tell the West that perhaps if we are pushed, we will use tactical weapons which have limited radiation fallout on the battlefield, and signal to the world that we are damn serious.
Interesting developments and days ahead. Thank you so much for your time. As always, interesting analysis. Geopolitical analyst Dr. Bola Adediran, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's turn to another war.